The Palaszczuk government wants to override the Human Rights Act.
It's allowing children to stay indefinitely in watch houses.
She will not implement a treaty unless it has bipartisan support.
She's back, returning from holidays.
Determined to lead Labor to next year's state election.
Annastacia Palaszczuk, thank you so much for joining the Daily Oz.
My pleasure.
I want to start really broad. In your eyes, what is the biggest issue facing young people in Queensland today?
I think the biggest issue facing young people is the cost of living that's happening right across Queensland and across Australia. So cost of fuel, rent, young people thinking about buying their own home. These are having a big impact on people. Unsure about what the future holds, how they're going to make ends meet, can they travel, is COVID coming back again? We're living in a very different world, but hopefully in a few years' time, everything will settle down.
Now, you were in support of the Voice referendum, but Queensland had the highest proportion of no votes. Does that suggest that you as a leader are out of touch with the opinions of the voters in your state?
I don't think so, because it was a national referendum and that no vote resonated across Australia. Referendums, to be successful, usually need bipartisan support, and that's been the history of referendums.
Were you surprised by how high the proportion of no voters in Queensland specifically were?
Well, I think we saw that across the nation. You know, and the Australian public have spoken, and as leaders we have to accept that position.
Now, your government has set out a path to establish a treaty with First Nations people. The opposition did support it. I think now, in the wake of the referendum, they're saying that they won't support it. Are you still committed to establishing a treaty?
Well, let me say that we passed through legislation and it was done in a bipartisan manner. We are committed to the legislation, but what I've said very clearly is that the next stage is the truth-telling stage. That truth-telling stage is set out in the legislation, is 3 to 5 years.
I just want to be really clear though, so you emphasised that there was bipartisan support. Now the opposition has said that they don't support the treaty specifically.
We support our legislation.
You're still committed to establishing the treaty?
The next stage is the truth-telling, which will be 3 to 5 years. Following that, there will be treaties, and that would require bipartisan support.
I just want to understand the bipartisan support, because there are a lot of policies that your government pursues without having the support of the opposition. So why on this issue are you insisting you need bipartisan support?
Well, we've seen very clearly that we need to make sure that truth-telling is told across Queensland.
But with the treaty, why do you need opposition support?
Well, the opposition need to explain why they have walked away from this. They need to sit down with the mayors, and I've been talking to many of the mayors, and explain why they did this.
But why do you need their support for the treaty to work?
Well, I think we've seen what's happened with the referendum not having bipartisan support.
In August, your government passed amendments allowing children to be kept in police watch houses, even if it would not be compatible with human rights. How do you justify overriding young people's human rights?
Well, what we saw is, unfortunately, people were taking legal action against us, which would have meant that some of these young people who are serious repeat offenders could have all been released into the community. Since then, I've actually personally sat down with the Human Rights Commissioner. What we are going to do over the next 6 to 9 months is build a dedicated remand facility, so there won't be any need for young people to be held in watch houses for any lengthy period of time.
My understanding is that the initial amendment said the need to override human rights will expire in 2026, but you just said it was 9 months.
Well, whenever it's completed, sometime next year, and then we will be able to repeal that.
So how confident are you that it will be repealed next year then?
Very confident.
The stats show that Queensland is the worst state when it comes to youth detention capacity. Why is it such a problem in Queensland?
It's an issue nationally, it's not just unique to Queensland.
Do you accept that it's, in terms of capacity at youth detention centres, it's more of an issue here?
You are correct, there are more people in our youth detention centres. That's why we're establishing therapeutic centres. Our best evidence shows us that if you have smaller centres, we can get access to mental health, to reskilling and training, access to First Nations elders where applicable.
The solution of building more youth detention centres addresses the outcome, but it doesn't address the cause. What is your government doing to address the cause of youth crime?
Well, we have got quite a few early intervention and prevention programs that are now starting to work. We've got a great program in Townsville at the moment. It's called Stronger Communities, and all of the agencies are coming together and they're working with the families of the young people who are troubled and putting services around them and helping to stop that reoffending rate.
Housing is a big issue in Queensland, as it is for the rest of the country. What is your plan to make housing more affordable again?
The issue Queensland has is 140,000 people moved here last year. So Queensland is a very attractive place for people to live. But 140,000 people moving here is putting a whole lot of pressure on our housing stock. So what we've done is we've identified where the new areas are. So there's more housing happening there. We've put in new roads, for example, in Caloundra, and the road was put in 10 years ahead of schedule, which means now we can open up another housing development area. The Deputy Premier has released a South East Queensland regional plan, making sure that the mayors know these are the population projections and you need to look at now how you are going to meet the requirements needed for the future population pressures.
Queensland has a target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 30% below 2005 levels, and that's below the target set by the federal government as well as many other state governments. Why not be more ambitious?
Well, can I start with our energy and jobs plan? So we have launched the most comprehensive energy and jobs plan in the nation. We're looking at 70% renewable energy by 2032. It's ambitious. We're at 26% and we are absolutely changing the landscape of Queensland and how we get our power. This is a massive transformation. Now, in relation to emissions reduction targets, our government will have a lot more to say about that in the new year. We're just getting in some more modelling and I'm looking forward to being able to deliver some more good news in that space.
Are you saying that the target will change?
Yes.
Now, you are the last remaining state leader in Australia from the pandemic era. You led the state through COVID, which other leaders have said took a massive toll on them. Are you exhausted?
No, I'm not exhausted. It was a very testing time and a time in my life that I will never forget. But I am energised every day by the people in our state.
You just had a holiday and you were criticised for it in the media. Does that take its toll when you feel like you can't even take a holiday without being criticised?
Well, they don't do it to men, so I'll let your listeners think about that.
There have been a number of state leaders who have departed their roles mid-term. There was Daniel Andrews, Mark McGowan, even Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. Is it an option for you that you take Labor to the next election, let's say you win, and then you leave mid-term?
No, I'm absolutely committed.
Well, you are the Minister for Olympics, so does that mean that we can expect to see you in the position in 2032?
Let's not go that far.
Annastacia Palaszczuk, thank you so much for joining the Daily Oz.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.